Daniel Jones has done what most deem to be impossible. He's taken this ragtag group of Colts players all the way to the top of the NFL. After everyone counted him out, his teammates, his coaches, the media, Daniel Jones never wavered. The faith he held in himself was more than enough to conquer any adversity that stood in his way. Less than 2 months ago, nobody was talking about or even thinking of Daniel Jones besides Colts fans who wondered how long he would last until Anthony Richardson inevitably replaced him. His career was holding on by a thread. That is how far he had fallen from being the 6th overall pick in the 2019 draft. But some say, once you reach rock bottom, the only way to go is up. And that has never been more true for Daniel Jones, who was at his lowest this offseason when he had to come to terms with the fact that the best offer he was going to get was one from the Indianapolis Colts, which was a 1-year deal worth only $14 million. The belief in Daniel Jones was so low, even from the Colts' own organization, that written into his contract, he will be paid $100,000 for each regular season win where he plays at least 50% of the snaps. Now, I can promise you that the Colts believe that would only apply to about 6 or 7 games at most, because that's how many games the Colts believed Daniel Jones would reach at his ceiling on this roster. However, we're not even to the midpoint of the season yet, and Daniel Jones is going to cross that win total. I can promise you, in a week or two from now, he will have more wins than what the Colts expected from him for the entirety of the season. If there's one thing that Daniel Jones and the Colts can't seem to do at all this season, is lose games. Because week after week, the Colts are walking away victorious, whether it be in blowout fashion or it come down to the wire. Daniel Jones has seemed to take this Colts team across the finish line. And we'll take a deeper dive into the Colts season and how Daniel Jones has been able to improve the roster around him in a second. But for right now, I wanted to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 10,000, so please subscribe. All right, now while Daniel Jones has been a very bright spot on this roster, he isn't the only one who's seen massive improvement this season, because you've got a secret dark horse for Offensive Player of the Year, hell, a potential MVP candidate in the backfield. That's right, I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor, who's putting up numbers that we haven't seen from him in almost 4 years. In 7 games for Jonathan Taylor this season, he's averaging nearly 100 yards per game. Per carry, he's averaging 5.3. Significantly improved since 2024, where he was a Pro Bowler, all right? And as for rushing touchdowns, he's got 10 on the season. He's 1 short of what he did last year. And receiving wise, he's got an extra touchdown, so you can throw that one right on there. Again, like I was mentioning with his rushing yards, if he's averaging about a solid 100 a game, then you can assume how many he's had so far this season. That's right, nearly 700, 697 to be exact, in 7 games. And that number is only going to continue to go up, because Jonathan Taylor is feasting off of what Daniel Jones has been able to do with this offense. Now that they are a threat through the passing game, that's opened up a lot of opportunities in the backfield for Jonathan Taylor, because they're not stacking the box anymore, and Jonathan Taylor isn't the only threat on this offense. Whereas for the past few seasons, you can argue that opponents never really had to worry about the Colts passing game, because they haven't had a stable QB under center since Andrew Luck retired, which has hurt Jonathan Taylor's production immensely. However, now that Daniel Jones has just strolled into town, Jonathan Taylor is feasting. This is the kind of performance he was putting up back in 2021, his sophomore season, and that year he came second in Offensive Player of the Year. And honestly, if the NFL respected running backs more, he'd be a top 10 MVP candidate, something that I believe he should be this season, because numbers wise, He's been the best running back in football, and yet that isn't getting enough media attention. Hell, the media has barely talked about the Colts, who can't seem to lose a game. Why? Because they're a smaller market franchise that has struggled for the past few seasons, and nobody saw this kind of success coming, especially with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. And while I may not be national media, I will pick up their slack on not being able to cover this Colts team like they should have been all season. I mean, Daniel Jones isn't the only massive addition they've made on the offensive side, because in the NFL draft, they went out and made one of the smartest decisions they possibly could in the first round. And that is draft by far the best tight end we've seen coming out of college in a while in Tyler Warren, who has been phenomenal in his first 6-7 games in the NFL. I mean, he leads the Colts in receiving yards, and it's not close. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, yeah, they're not touching the numbers that Tyler Warren has been producing this season. The connection that he's had with Daniel Jones is incredible to watch, and he's always there when Daniel Jones needs somebody to get the first down. If Jonathan Taylor can't get the first down, you can guarantee that Tyler Warren is going to pass that marker, because that's what they've shown to be able to do so far this season. Now, do I think the Colts are going to slow down? By no means do I think that this offense is going to hit a roadblock, especially considering the division that they're in. I mean, the Titans, worst team in the NFL. The Texans, an absolute mess. Who knows what happens with them? And the Jaguars seem to be more of a fluke than everybody else. So the possibility for success knows no bounds out there in Indianapolis. Now, I want to talk about a few of the games the Colts have played so far in the season. In Week 1, they went up against the Miami Dolphins, where they showed a little preview of what they'd be doing for the rest of the season. They moved the ball up and down the field with ease the entire game. I mean, they got out to a 30-0 lead against this Miami Dolphins team. Whether it be Daniel Jones throwing it to Michael Pittman for a touchdown, or just rushing in for a touchdown multiple times throughout this game. Hell, another bright spot that the Colts have had besides Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman and this offense had been Spencer Schrader, who was electric, making field goals at a highly efficient and effective rate. Spencer Schrader was a dog. Of course, we know what would happen to him, but for right now, the Colts won 33-8, and Daniel Jones had one of his best performances of the season. He went out and had a passer rating of 115.9, something that he hasn't topped yet, as well as throwing for 272 yards, had one passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns, and had a completion percentage of 75.9. Yeah, Daniel Jones played phenomenal Week 1. Then Week 2 comes around, and I'm going to be honest, the first 3 weeks for the Colts, their offense could do no wrong. Now, this game was a lot closer. They would be playing the Denver Broncos, and Daniel Jones threw for 316 yards, had 1 touchdown in the air, and shot out Jonathan Taylor because he had a great game himself, where he was able to rush for 165 yards on 25 carries. Now, this game, like I mentioned, was a lot closer. It started with a few Spencer Schrader field goals to get the Colts into this game. And then, of course, Daniel Jones would rush for another touchdown to give the Colts the lead for the first time. Now, their defense didn't hold up too great against Bo Nix. However, there was Jonathan Taylor to fight back and claw them into this game with a 7-yard rushing touchdown, and it would be neck and neck heading into the fourth quarter, with the Colts only being down by 3. And of course, what ends up happening? Spencer Schrader makes enough field goals to give this team the lead, and all because Daniel Jones was putting them in a position where they were in field goal range. So shout out Daniel Jones. They may not have gotten into the end zone as much as they wanted to, but they got into field goal range and made the most out of their opportunities to start the season 2-0. Of course, this would lead to Week 3, where they would play the Titans, and as we now know, the Titans are the worst team in football. Hell, they've already fired their head coach, Brian Callahan, so that should tell you all you need to know about the Titans. As for Daniel Jones, he threw for 228 yards, had another passing touchdown, and the Colts ended up scoring 41 points. Now, this time, the defense would be involved in the scoring. I mean, it started with a pick 6, 32 yards. Kenny Moore II got a pick 6 on Cam Ward. And, of course, the offense was able to do their part, whether it be Jonathan Taylor, who was rushed for 100 yards again this game, had a few rushing touchdowns, not a few, 3 of them. And as for Daniel Jones, he had his pass to Michael Pittman for 20 yards for a TD. This offense was beautiful. By halftime, they were winning 20-6, and they didn't stop scoring until the fourth quarter when Jonathan Taylor ran it in for the last touchdown of the game to give them a lead, 41-20, in which the game would end. Now, like I said, they were perfect throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. Their only bad game was against the Rams. And that was Daniel Jones' worst game by far. Honestly, had Daniel Jones played up to the level in which he had been all season, they probably wouldn't have lost that game, but they stuck in it for a majority of it. They did only lose by 7. Daniel Jones had a passer rating of 80, which was far below what he had been doing for the rest of the season. He had thrown 2 interceptions. Those were the first interceptions of the season for him. He struggled a bit against the Rams. However, it's how you bounce back that matters most in the NFL. It speaks volumes to who this team truly is. And as much as you might not believe it, this Week 6 match against the Las Vegas Raiders basically determined how the rest of the season was going to go. How do the Colts handle adversity? They come back better than ever. They dismantled the Las Vegas Raiders. There wasn't a lot of scoring happening in the first quarter, but once Daniel Jones and that offense touched the ball, they couldn't stop finding the end zone. Whether it be Tyler Warren catching an 11-yard pass from Daniel Jones to take the lead, or Jonathan Taylor rushing in for a touchdown just a few minutes later, or hell, even Michael Pittman being able to snag a touchdown of his own before the half. Next thing you know, the Colts are up 20-3 before halftime, and they would go on to score another 20 points in the second half of this game to beat the Las Vegas Raiders 40-6. Jonathan Taylor, guess what? He had his second 3-touchdown performance of the season. When I say Jonathan Taylor was great this year, I mean it. And the reason I made this video was because of how they did against the Cardinals. This is where they would get tested another time. Because, you've had their games where the Colts dominate or where they lose. But when they have to battle for a win and they come out on top, this is where you see the Colts at their strongest. Daniel Jones would throw an interception. Who cares? Because the rest of the game, he was damn near fucking perfect. He had 212 passing yards, he had 2 touchdowns, completed 22 out of his 30 passing attempts, and without him, they don't win this game. The first 3 quarters, the Cardinals and the Colts are exchanging scores, whether it be touchdown met by touchdown, touchdown met by field goal met by touchdown. Anyway, we get to the fourth quarter, and the Colts are down. They're down a touchdown, but here comes Daniel Jones in this offense. They take a drive, 6 plays, 67 yards, in only a handful of minutes, and it ends with a Josh Downs 5-yard catch to tie up this game. Now, of course, the Cardinals would answer back, however, this time with a field goal, and that wasn't enough because when the game mattered most, the Colts ended up having a 4-minute drive, nearly 5 minutes, had 9 plays. They drove down the length of this field, and of course, you can imagine who ended up having the game-winning touchdown. Jonathan Taylor. Hell, when they get in the red zone, you'll either see Daniel Jones or Jonathan Taylor rushing in for a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor would have more rushing touchdowns if Daniel Jones wasn't so big-boned and able to get into that end zone so easily. And then we have the game against the Chargers, where the 3 best Colts players show up and show out. They do what they've been doing the entire season, and they did it pretty early on into this game. Daniel Jones threw for about 288 yards, had 2 passing touchdowns, had a rating of 113.4. Jonathan Taylor, 16 carries, averaged 5.9 yards per carry, had almost 100 rushing yards, and again, another 3-touchdown performance. And of course, Tyler Warren had himself a game. He had 4 receptions, 70 yards, a touchdown, went for as long as 30 on one of those plays, and by halftime, the Colts had won this game. It was 23-3, and the Chargers did score a little bit in the second half, but the Colts would end up coming away with a 38-24 victory. It really feels like the Colts can score in any way possible, whether it be their offense, their defense, their receivers, their running backs, Daniel Jones rushing it in. The possibilities to score for this Colts team are endless. But I can tell you from the outside looking in that nobody on that offense cares how they score, just that they do score. And that is why the Colts have been great. That is why the Colts have the best record in the AFC. And depending on how the Bucs do, the Colts might have the best record in the NFL in just a few days' time. But anyway, that's about it for this video. I think I've covered everything I've wanted to, so I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.